Hello, and welcome to another episode of Paranormal NL, a place where people in Newfoundland and Labrador can share their paranormal experiences and from anywhere else in Canada and the world. Today, I'll be speaking with Betty Collins and also Leah Walters. And we're going to be talking about a few different topics about the paranormal. In particular, we'll talk about CE-5 and fairies and even more things. Now, Betty Collins is from Newfoundland and Labrador. Betty is an expert in the paranormal, mystical, and metaphysical things in Newfoundland and Labrador and all things off planet. Now, when you hear off planet, you think of extraterrestrial or ETs. So, Betty, I want you to go ahead and introduce Leah Walters.
Absolutely. My friend Leah is from British Columbia. I met Leah a number of years ago here at a metaphysical meetup. She has a degree in metaphysics. She is a spirit and psychic medium. She's an expert in paranormal consultation and investigation. She is a CE-5 facilitator using Dr. Stephen Gueret's protocol. And as just a matter of fact, Leah is taking part in a CE-5 night tonight in BC, and I'm very, very jealous. And she has many, many healing modalities as well. She is the author of a book. This book is entitled "This Expression That We All Use." What the fuck? You mean there's more? And the author name on this book would be Reverend Lois Gueret, G-E-U-R-E-T. That's Leah's maiden name, and the Reverend, I'll let Leah explain all that when Jennifer asks her about it.
Welcome to the show, Leah.
Hello there. I'm sitting out here in BC and tripping out on the Newfoundland accent. It's wonderful. It's been a while.
It is.
You gotta love our Newfoundland accents, that's for sure. Now, Leah, for our listeners who don't know what CE-5 is, can you explain a little bit about that?
CE-5 is the close encounter designation, level 5, where people get together and raise the vibration or frequency of their thoughts through meditation and do remote viewing to make contact. So it's earth-based contact to our star family or extraterrestrial beings. So, it happens on typically on the first Saturday of a month, and it's done globally because that helps protect everybody. If there's so many people around the planet doing the contact, it's less likely to, end up being something that is unsafe for either us or the star family.
Yes, because when people think about close encounters, the first, second, third, and now the fifth kind, like you said, some people tend to get a little bit nervous and maybe a bit apprehensive about doing such a thing. I don't know if you saw the show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, where a gentleman actually does a CE-5 right there, and they appear within minutes.
I didn't see that episode. I'll have to watch for it. But I liked the original one. But now that they've gone beyond Skinwalker Ranch, they've introduced a whole bunch of really interesting information.
Yes.
Especially about the Navajo Nation.
Yeah.
And your meditation and consciousness is very important in relation to the metaphysical.
It is very important because everything is about frequency, right? Whether you're talking about having extraterrestrial contact or whether you're talking about a healing modality, and meditation is the groundwork for having yourself at a higher vibrational level.
Now, you've mentioned remote viewing. Leah, this is something that even the military have used before for investigative things and trying to find and identify things. Can you speak on that?
Well, yes, it is a practice that I don't know. I would have to look it up, but I believe that it was the military who coined the term remote viewing. So it's based on your psychic abilities, and it is a mild form of divination. It's not like an out-of-body experience because you stay in your body, but your consciousness or your mind can reach out and view different locations by practicing remote viewing.
Now, Betty, if talking about different metaphysical dimensions, can you speak a bit on soul genesis and Reiki?
Well, Reiki, most of us have actually, and it's more of I call it healing touch. It's not. There is another modality called healing touch. So you're basically, we're using our own energy along with universal energy to impart healing to whatever area we touch. And this is the biggest one for me. And I tried it, and I figured the one person I'll try it on was my mom. My mom was full of arthritis and really in a lot of pain. And it was right after I finished Reiki. And I just said to her one day, she was talking about her shoulder, she couldn't lift her arm. And I said, Mom, can I try something? She said, at this point, I don't care, go ahead. So I was doing her hair, I was a hairdresser. She fell asleep. I just literally envisioned gold light in my hands, laid it on her shoulder, and very, very, very gently, so I wasn't pushing or anything. And I left my hands there for almost 5 minutes. The next day, she called me at work. Mom never called me, but she called me at work enough that she scared me. And I said, Mom, is everything okay? She said, whatever you did yesterday, she said, I didn't even think about it. I reached up in the cupboard this morning and took out a bowl. So that's the kind of stuff that Reiki does. Soul Genesis is all about the origination of our soul. Where did this divine spark begin? Originally in Soul Genesis, we used just a set number of planets. So I'm understanding that this set number of planets and specific planets, they just make up, they give us who we are. They give us the little bits of personality, the little bits of this and that. And with the Soul Genesis reading, you can actually clean up areas where you're stuck. So those are those two modalities. But I would really like to talk with Leah about when we had to actually use our divination for fairies, and we didn't know they were fairies in the beginning in Harbour Grace.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I'm just going to say I'll stop there and wait for either Jennifer or Leah to pick this one up.
Yeah, Leah, talk to us about that.
I'm trying to remember. It was the client that I had who told me that her son had an encounter with fairies, and
Yes.
they were describing a circle of trees behind some abandoned house, and he was with his friends, they got lost. And Betty can talk more about this. It was a typical Newfoundlander fairy experience.
Now, Betty, for the listeners who may not be in Newfoundland or Labrador, fairies in Newfoundland are a little bit different. Can you explain what they are?
Well, we've got brownies here, and there are people who say the only fairies we have in Newfoundland are the brownies. Brownies are known to be little devils. Like they're not the nice fairies. They're brown. They got knobblies all over them. And yes, this woman's son actually saw them hanging from the light fixture. She had just built this beautiful home. So this brown thing is hanging from the light fixture in the home. And she's got a very interesting painting where she had a very interesting painting at the end of her hall that when I looked at it, I kind of just wanted to walk into it. Now, before we even went there, we had a discussion with her by phone. We could see her, we could see her house. And I think we all got the feeling that this is not paranormal. This is not ghosts. This is not spirits. It's something more. So through the jigs and the reels, we found out that yes, okay, we're dealing with fairies here. When we actually all went out to Harbor Grace, we went to this property, and it was a group of us. One of the girls felt that she had to bring cinnamon, and she brought, I think probably a pound or more of ground cinnamon to encircle the property, just to protect it from these fairies.
Now, Betty, cinnamon. Now with fairies, I've heard bread in your pockets. I've heard salt. I've heard iron ore. What does cinnamon do?
I actually can't remember, and that's what I was going to ask Leah if she could remember. It was one in particular. One of our members was prompted to bring the cinnamon.
Leah, can you speak towards a little bit of alchemy, or what would cinnamon be used for?
If I'm remembering correctly, so my experience with cinnamon comes from the Wiccan community in BC, and it is a banishing and a replenishing. So it has dual properties, and that's a good thing, because so if you were to put something like pepper down, you're just doing banishing. You're not inviting higher vibrational energy in. But cinnamon does both. So it was appropriate, and it was also something that was rather distracting for the fairies.
It absolutely was. Leah and I, Jennifer, both heard the same thing. When I got out of my car, and when she got out of hers, I just said, "Oh my God, I just heard a laugh." And Leah said, "I heard it too." And it was a deep laugh, like, this type of, and I don't see energies as in shapes and forms. I feel it. So I could hear this. I didn't know what it was. We found out that this guy had basically lost his family in my the way I thought of him. He was like a Shrek, only he wasn't as pretty looking as Shrek. He wasn't mean and angry. He wasn't mean and angry. He was just looking for his family. We actually brought him to Buttercup Park, and the lady who owned that house used to go to Buttercup Park, and she wouldn't go anymore because she was afraid he was going to find her.
But he was very happy to relocate.
He absolutely was. I mean, I watched him skipping into the park like, I'm going home. I'm going to find my friends. I'm going to find my family.
Now, Leah, you mentioned the word Wiccan. For people who are listening, can you explain what that is? People think there's good and there's bad. Can you speak on that?
Well, I had an opportunity when I was living in the interior of BC to study under someone who was a Wiccan practitioner, and she used to run classes, and I was interested enough, because when I first came across her, I had no idea what it was. I had no understanding of what paganism was or what Wiccan was. So Wicca is a form of paganism, which means paganism is basically just an earth-based practice. It's really old. It predates, Christianity. It predates Judaism. It predates Buddhism. It was our original way of tracking the seasons and understanding the natural world so that we could interact with it on a better way. It's a practice that also includes herbology and rituals, and so we, in old times, the celebrations that we practice today, for example, like Easter, come from Wiccan practices where they were celebrating the beginning of the spring and the ability to plant food again. That's what it was all about. It was a way to get together, have a celebration. The community knew that they were going to have to work as a community to to create a harvest for the fall.
So it closely followed celestial things and metaphysical things?
Say that again, please?
It closely follows solar and metaphysical things, such as
It does.
in the galaxy?
Yeah. So what usually upsets people is the idea of doing magic. So it's also inclusive of rituals that are called spells. And there is an understanding that you can work with the light or you can work with the dark. Most of the practitioners that I have worked with or studied under were of the light, because there's something called the Wiccan Reed, and it's a set of rules or understanding of the metaphysical universe. And one of their most important ones is about threefold, and that if you're to do anything that creates an intention and directs energy, for example, like a spell, if you don't do it right, it can come back at you threefold.
Oh.
And that's their understanding of how the universe works. Yeah.
So it's something not to be taken lightly. So with the light form, it's more of meditation and consciousness.
They still do practice spells. They would do spells for abundance, for healing, to mend relationships, to improve their opportunities for education. There's all kinds of things like that that are on the light side that left and harm none is a part of all spells. So you don't want to create a situation where someone comes to harm because you wanted something.
You know, in different cultures, you hear different things about the evil eye and the ojo in the Mexican culture. Is that something similar?
Well, okay, so there's a whole different, there's lots of different pagan practices. One of them would be voodoo, and that's a culture. Voodoo is really a culture plus a religion. Hoodoo, which evolved out of voodoo. I don't know too much about those. They do a lot of, some of their practices are blood magic, which means there's sacrifices done. And the mild form of that would be cracking an egg open, as a part of the doing prophetic work or creating a ritual.
In some cultures, using an egg can actually take away bad things from the body for healing.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And the blood magic, as far as I know, that's sometimes practiced, not so much anymore, was for that intention. It was to, let's look at a mild form of that, and that would be a Judaic practice where I believe it's Yom Kippur, where they had a sacrificial lamb, that the worries, the problems, and the sins of the community were put on the back of the lamb, and it was chased out of town and then sacrificed. So that's an old practice.
I'm sure Dr. Judd Burton could speak on that with his ancient history knowledge. We'll have to ask him about that in a later.
Ask him about that,
yeah. So, Betty, is there anything that you wanted to mention on that topic before we move back on to CE-5?
No, not at all, because I think Leah's the expert there. I really enjoy listening. I really do. I learn a lot, believe me. The CE-5 night is what I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Because when I sent Jennifer my little blurb, I just wrote star families, neighbors, and friends. And I think that there's a question in there.
Well, yeah, I had kind of asked, well, what do you mean by that? And she had said, well, ET, friends and families. And I'll let you speak more on that.
So we had a really interesting, and Leah, I don't even know if you can remember that CE-5 night that we had, that one in particular in your backyard.
I remember bits and parts of it. It was, what's Richard's last name again?
Richard Parks. Yep.
Parks. There we go.
Okay, we're gonna stop right now, and we're gonna